Up next, investigative mythologist William Henry joins me with his latest work. We shall be right back. Easter, of course, right around the corner. That means the Shroud of Turin time. William Henry is going to pay a little visit and do some research. We're going to check in with him on that and some of the other things he's been up to next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. William Henry, of course, Nashville-based author, investigative mythologist. He's a futurist. He specializes in human transformation along with his wife, Claire. He does lead spiritual journeys to Egypt, France, Italy. He's got a pilgrimage coming up to experience the Shroud of Turin, which we will talk about, in addition to some of his many other things. But, William, always a pleasure. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you, George, so much. It's a pleasure to talk with you, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
You know, we're coming up on Easter, and I just love stories about the Shroud of Turin. Tell me about your pilgrimage.
Oh, well, we're taking a group to Italy. Our tour is called Immortal Italy. It's based on the Christian teachings about ascension and resurrection, all themed about the Shroud of Turin and an opportunity for guests to stand before it. We have a special access to visit the shroud and spend moments in front of it and actually experience the energy of the shroud. It's one of the most remarkable things I've ever experienced in my life, having had an opportunity to stand before the shroud back in 2010.
Do you believe the shroud is authentic?
I absolutely believe it's authentic, and I think that what we're going to see here in the next few years is the church come out and actually put the stamp of authenticity on it as well.
You know, William, since I've been looking at the Shroud of Turin way back into the 90s when I was doing shows in St. Louis, there's some people there. Mark Antonacci has written a book. He lives in St. Louis, and so many other people. It's amazing because you have talked about the light body effect. And we're going to get into your new work, but I'm convinced that there was a burst of energy coming from this body of someone called Jesus that created that image on the shroud. I don't think it's a painting. I don't think Leonardo da Vinci did it. I think it's real myself.
Oh, absolutely, George. I had a visceral encounter with it, an actual experience with it standing before it, in which a golden being of light manifested in my consciousness as I was meditating in the chapel in front of the shroud. And that is in part what convinced me. But story after story, George, throughout the ages of the shroud's power to transmit a divine vibration is the message that I keep getting out of it. And that's even coming from the popes, going back to 2000 when Cardinal Ratzinger first started describing the shroud as not just a mysterious image, but as an icon written in blood. And then Pope Francis also picked up this term icon. That is so important because what they're saying is that the shroud is not an inert relic, a dead relic. It is a living image. And in Christian terminology, when you describe something as an icon, what you are saying is that it's perceived as having, one, extraordinary metaphysical powers, which we know the shroud does. It's a living image, but here's the thing, George, that by definition, an icon functions as a portal or a gateway, and it can transmit spiritual power. This is something the Templars knew. The Knights Templar venerated the shroud and believed that by connecting to it through their linen strands that they always wore around their waist, that it actually assured them protection in the earthly life, but more importantly, was a symbol of the promise of their resurrection in the afterlife. That's the power we're dealing with when we're talking about the shroud.
And didn't the Knights Templar protect the shroud? They watched it?
Yes, they did for a number of years. They are believed to have recovered it from Jerusalem. They took it to France, where it remained for several centuries. And during this time is when they began to, develop this idea that they could connect themselves to the power of the shroud through these linen strands that they wore around their waist. They would actually have these ceremonies where they would lay their linen strands on the shroud and allow it to imbue these strands with the spiritual energy of the shroud itself.
Okay, the shroud is in a glass case.
Yes.
How close do you think you can get to it?
When we visit the shroud, you're less than 5 feet away from it.
That's pretty close.
So you are able to
That's
see
pretty
all
close.
of the wounds, the scorch marks, the blood stains. You're able to just absolutely connect with it on a mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional basis.
I assume the
profound.
security is pretty tight because that's probably a target of ISIS.
The security, in my view, was fairly invisible. I'm sure it was pervasive in the chapel, but George, it was such a very sacred experience when Claire and I went to Turin in 2010. There were several thousand people in line with us. It was a very reverent kind of experience, meditative. We snaked along this long line going into the chapel. They showed a beautiful film that prepared us for what we were about to see and experience. And everybody enters it in a state of real reverence and awe. They're mostly believers. You're not going to get skeptics here. People aren't here to throw rocks at the shroud when they make a pilgrimage to visit it. They have an understanding, a deep understanding that they're about to stand before a two-way mirror, and they are going to connect with divinity, and that is so profound.
If the shroud is authentic, you believe it, I believe it, but if it is, what does that mean for humanity, William?
Well, it means that we have connected with the divine realm, that all of the ancient stories about human transformation into light beings are absolutely true, and that within each and every one of us is the potential to awaken this divine spark within and transform ourselves into these holy light beings. And the message of the shroud for me is ultimately it's a message of love. It's a message about us utilizing our lifespan to glorify God, if we can say that, and to also to transform the earth. This is the reason why Jesus took on a physical body, was to show us how to transform into light beings, but also how to transform the earth into a place of light and love and peace. And that is ultimately what is the message of the shroud, and also it's the technology of how we do that.
Well, good luck on this trip and be safe. You always worry me, William. Every time I get a hold of you, you were on a bus in Egypt during the Arab Spring situation. You're always in the middle of this stuff.
Well, you got to walk on the wild side sometimes if you want to get the bear. You got to step out on the outer edge of the branch to get the fruit sometimes,
yeah.
And that's what we end up doing.
You're going on another Egyptian tour as well, aren't you?
Yes, we are. Thank you, George. We're going in late October, early November for another running of our legendary Stargate Egypt tour, and can't wait. Now's the time to be in Egypt. It's the tourist numbers are down, but the energy in the temples is way up, and the Egyptians have never been more open and welcoming than they are now.
In the old days, would Zahi come and meet up with you?
He has met us on only one tour. I
don't know where he is now.
I don't know either.
I'm
not I don't like confrontations, and He has a different viewpoint on the ancient Egyptian beliefs than many of the people that join us on our tours have. So we just we respectfully stay away.
So true. Now you have a new book out, and it's not the Singularity. It is called Skingularity is
That's
near.
right.
Is that true? Or tell me about this word, this play on words or something.
Yeah, it's a play on words. Of course, many know of Ray Kurzweil's wonderful book, The Singularity is Near, in which he prophesizes the emergence of this artificially intelligent technology coming online that where the machines suddenly take on vast intelligence and might even take over the planet. And what I did is, which I've been focusing on since actually around 2003, is noticing that this technology that they all keep talking about is actually aimed at the human skin. We are literally in the process right now and doing it, transforming our skin, creating a new layer of skin. There are 4 what I refer to as mystical technologies that are intentionally converging into one seamless technology that is aimed at the body, specifically the skin.
Now, explain that.
What's happening is that, and this goes back to, again, early 2000s when there was major conferences sponsored by the U.S. government, read DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, started to gather the digerati, the elite of Silicon Valley, Shanghai, Tokyo, elsewhere, as well as the technocrati. These are the elite technological companies. They got them together and they said, okay, here's what's happening. 4 technologies, our genetic technology, our computer science, our nanotechnology, and our brain science are all becoming one technology. And the U.S. government began actively promoting the convergence of these technologies, and between now and 2020, the insiders that come to my presentations tell me 2020 is the year we make contact with this new skin, that we will see the emergence of these technologies becoming one seamless technology, all converging in a sensational new skin that has these super attributes like super intelligence, super strength, longevity, and even shape-shifting.
Will the skin be like a garment?
Yes. That's the thing about it that really unlocked it for me, George, and makes it so absolutely astonishing in a way, is that everything that the digerati are planning for this skin mimics exactly the robe of light or the garment of light of the ancient gods. I mean, you can go back to 2300 BC to the goddess Mari, who wears the garments of immortality. It's a robe called the Pala garment or the miracle garment. And in statues, one, for example, is in the Aleppo Museum in Syria. I hope it's still there. It's likely been destroyed by ISIS or other terrorists. But in this statue, she wears her miracle garment. She holds a vase with the elixir of life. She wears the rainbow necklace of immortality.
She's got it all.
Pardon me?
She's got it all.
Yeah, the helmet of salvation. These are all considered to be technologies from one point of view that we're presently duplicating, but from another perspective, they're also aspects of our, we can call them psycho-spiritual powers that are within us. These aren't necessarily apps like you have on your computer or your phone, but they come from within. And the choice that is before us right now is, are we going to acquire these super attributes through technology, or are we going to make the choice to stay totally organic beings and develop them from within? And as I see it, there's a giant elephant in the room right now on the earth that very few are talking about, but more and more are beginning to. And that elephant is about the transformation of humanity by technology, and about this technology going into our bodies. And what happens as it goes into our body is, this is the end of free will, and we're talking about an outside force, a government or a corporation, being able to hack our bodies and take instant and total control of our thoughts and our biological processes.
Now, is this skin, is it something physical, or is it more mystical?
Well, it's both, really, because technologically speaking, when you talk with people like Ray Kurzweil, who of course is now running Google's immortality project. Google just a couple weeks ago said they're spending over $400 million trying to crack the immortality code so that we can live to be over 500 years old. What Google proposes is, and this is in development right now under the purview of Ray Kurzweil, they are developing a nanonutrient garment. What this is a garment that is made of carbon nanotubes, nanotechnology, that are strings of nanotubes that are 10,000 times smaller than a human hair. And what they're saying is that we will, for a time, wear this nutrient garment, such as like a belt or an undershirt, that will be loaded with nutrient-bearing nanobots that will make their way in and out of our bodies through the skin and all the other body cavities. We have 10 inputs into the body, and the nanotechnologists, the digerati, plan on accessing all of them.
How did you get involved in this end of your work, William?
It started with my book, my 2003 book, Cloak of the Illuminati, where I was looking at the power cloaks of the ancient gods, from Ptah of ancient Egypt, Osiris, Elijah, Jesus. All of these figures possessed these power garments that were transmittable. In other words, they were passed from avatar to avatar, individual to individual. And I started pulling on this thread and wondering, is this an actual garment that we're talking about? I mean, Adam and Eve were supposed to have originally been beings of light that wore garments of light, the robe of the soul. And after the fall is when we are given our garments of skin. And this is the fundamental transformation in humanity. Before, when we're in the Garden of Eden, we're ephemeral light beings. After the fall, we are given coats of human skin. And ever since that time, we have been trying to get back to our original state of perfection, as they describe it, as light beings. And so what I started following were all these stories of individuals, avatars and divine beings who have attained that state of perfection. And I noticed that there was constantly this reference to this transmittable garment or robe of immortality that they possessed. And I started then matching that up with what was happening in Silicon Valley and this convergence of the four technologies: bits, atoms, neurons, and genes.
I'm trying to picture this skin, this robe-like skin, and what material would it be made with? Carbon fibers?
Yes, carbon nanotubes. You won't even be able to see them, but you will be able to program them. I mean, literally, you will be able, at the blink of an eye, to change the color of your skin. If you're feeling blue, you literally can make your skin radiate a blue color. A rainbow color is also possible as well, which is very interesting because another term for the light body is the rainbow body of light. What we're starting to see, George, and you can go online and look at various examples of technologies that are already being rolled out for skin tattoos. And what's fascinating about this is that one in particular is called a gold biostamp. It's composed of snake-like strands of silicon, which is very interesting because the power cloaks of the ancients were notably woven of gold wires. And when you look into the Old Testament, for example, the high priest of the Israelite tradition wore this power garment where he had the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the robe of righteousness, and it was woven throughout with gold wires. And here we are with this new skin technology that's composed of tiny snake-like strands of silicon that are the key to this electronic skin. Others of it will actually be embedded in the skin, where we have materials that are now coming online that are actually being tested in government laboratories right now that will be enmeshed in the skin. They will be sewn into the skin. And this is going to create a synthetic version of skin that's flexible, electrically conductive, and it's also self-healing. The skin will never wear out.
Will you be able to teleport with it or disappear, cloak yourself like that?
Well, this is part of the capabilities that they're building into this, and this goes back to the ancient robes, where the divine beings had the powers of levitation, invisibility, teleportation, bilocation, and this is exactly the type of things they're talking about with the eye skin or e-skin, as I term it, where we will gain superhuman powers. We will have the power of invisibility. That's already coming online. I mean, that's a major facet of it that's already being rolled out. We will also ultimately, and this is the thing about it, both metaphysically as well as technologically, the ultimate purpose of developing this skin is so that we can escape our atmospheric barrier.
Interesting takes. Hold on, William. We're going to hit the break. Let's come back and talk about your work about aliens next. Are there alien predators among us? We'll check in with William Henry about that when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. William Henry with us. William, let's talk a little bit about alien predators. What have you uncovered here?
Well, especially in relation to, the development of human potential and the use of technology to augment or supplement the human body, you have to look no further than the Apostle Paul. When he's in prison in AD 62, he gives advice on living a holy and pure life, and he warns against about a mighty power, a predatory power that is not from this world. They're powers of the dark world, a predatory force that's a spiritual force of evil that comes from the heavenly realms. His remedy for this is to be strong in the Lord, as he describes it. Then he also goes on to describe augmenting or supplementing the human body with tools or technologies that will enable us to combat these predatory powers. These tools that he refers to are the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the belt of truth, the sword of truth, the shield of faith, and the sandals of peace. What Paul is saying is that, hey, there's this predatory power, and if you want to avoid them or overcome them, we're going to have to suit up in what's called the armor of God. This is not a new idea to Paul. He's talking about something that goes back at least a couple hundred years before his time when the Gnostics were discussing it, but it even goes back further than that, all the way back to the Sumerian times, where we're constantly being encouraged to put on or to develop from within these psycho-spiritual attributes that will enable us to repel this evil or predatory force.
What do they want, William?
They want two things, according to the stories or the accounts. They want our souls, and they also want an energy that they harvest from the human body. And the stories are also made clear that the way to repel these beings is that we've got to keep our vibration at a state that makes our energy or our bodies, our souls, unpalatable to these beings. This is the common thing, whether you're talking about Don Juan and the Carlos Castaneda books, you're talking about the Gnostics, or even you're talking about the Apostle Paul. They all make reference to this predatory race coming from the stars, seeking our souls or to harvest this energy from our bodies.
Are they demonic?
They could certainly be considered a demonic force. It's any force that wants that seeks to control our soul. By definition, I think has to be considered demonic. And when they seek to implant technology in us, as for example the Greys do in alien abduction, then it for certain crosses over into the demonic realm, where they're attempting to lead humanity along this path where we lose complete free will, we lose individual autonomy, and we lose any kind of concept of the soul at all.
It is amazing at how people like David Jacobs, they're totally convinced, and I'm beginning to feel that way too, William, that these predator aliens have their own agenda, and they have had their agenda for a long time. Do you feel that way too?
Absolutely. I've been studying, of course, the Gnostic writings from the 1st century AD that were discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, 1945, that have explicit warnings and descriptions of these predators. They call them archons, and they clearly see themselves as the rulers of humanity, or the human mind anyway. Jesus spoke of them and talked about how to avoid them. And one key way that they control us is through stories. What we're ultimately all attempting to do in the earth plane is to transform the earth into a place of light and love, and then ultimately to ascend to another realm. By hijacking these stories of ascension, essentially telling people, oh, you can't attain a state of human perfection. Who are you to think that you can ascend? They have suddenly hijacked or hacked our story. And this is why the Gnostics were so keen to collect these stories and to rehearse these stories of our ascension, and why the the transmissions, if you will, that came from the resurrected Jesus were so important to the Gnostics. It's because it was his way of showing us how to evade these archons and these predatory powers and to navigate the afterlife and indeed to make our way through the cosmos.
William, since you've been doing this, is it your opinion that this alien predator influence is picking up steam?
I think so, and there's plenty of evidence of that when you look around it. It just the number of UFO sightings in the modern world, the utter and fascination that the people worldwide have with the idea of ancient aliens, for example. There seems to be a kind of a knowing that there is this other race that seems to be controlling things. People get frustrated with politics and say, oh, the right wing, the left wing, they're all the same. And in a way they are, because the take, of course, is that they're controlled by an extraterrestrial force up above the earthly politics. And so this is what we're dealing with right now. And I feel that this implantation or enmeshing of technology in the human body could be interpreted as one facet of this. It's a very complicated subject, though, George, because, in fact, the idea of perfecting the body and utilizing technology to perfect the body specifically is a Christian idea. It comes from Christian mystics like Joachim of Fiore and Francis of Assisi, who proposed that the second coming was coming, and that will be a time when we will be transformed into light to match or mirror the resurrected state of Jesus, who manifested his light body, as evidenced by the Shroud of Turin. And the key insight that began to develop in the 13th century was that, hey, this technology that is transforming our world, that's enabling us to do more work, is a gift from God, and that we can utilize technology to accelerate our transformation into perfected beings. So as a matter of fact, this whole idea of using technology to transform the body is a Christian concept, and it is entirely compatible with Christian thinking. It sounds absolutely bizarre to people to think like that enmeshing our flesh with technology is compatible with Christianity, but it absolutely is.
Let's think back to Genesis for a moment. Fallen angels. Do you think what they were really trying to convey was an extraterrestrial visitation?
Oh, absolutely. When the Watchers came down from the throne of Sion, the celestial Jerusalem, that is, without question, contact with an extraterrestrial race. What did they bring with them? Technology. The technology of human transformation into angels, and the ability of humans to cross a boundary between earth and heaven. This whole subject, George, is about this boundary. Humans are, in a sense, quarantined out here on the Orion arm of our galaxy on planet Earth. Up until the time of the Essenes, just before the time of Jesus, and it was the Essenes who wrote the story about the Watchers and the angels bringing this technology. There was a belief that humans were not allowed to cross the boundary between earth and heaven, nor were angelic beings allowed to cross the boundary and take on flesh and blood bodies. But this is exactly what started to happen, and ever since then, we have been storming this gate or this boundary, and this development of technology, this breakneck technology that we're describing here, is ultimately all about transforming our bodies into machines, literally, so that then we can cross over the atmospheric boundary that keeps us planet-bound. Our flesh and blood bodies are not going into space, at least not into deep space. We'll make it maybe to the moon and Mars in these bodies, but we're not going to Alpha Centauri in them, that's for sure.
Well, you've done a great job looking at all of this, William. Let's just hope we can pull out of this, huh?
Well, I mean, we're right on the edge of it. As I say in my book, there's this great giant elephant in the room. One half of it is gray, which represents the choice that all of us are going to be making here in the next 1 to 3 years, 5 years at the most. Will we stuff our flesh with this technology? Will it become mandatory is my greatest fear, George. It's not going to be a choice, that this is going to be imposed by some governmental authority. The mark of the beast, of course, is what we're talking about. So will we stuff our flesh with technology, either by choice or probably by a mandatory decree from maybe the UN, U.S. government, some other entity that hasn't been formed yet? Or will we remain pink and develop ourselves organically and utilize the spiritual technology that is within us to access our divinity? Those are the two choices that are before us right now. And what I'm trying to do with my book, which is, of course, The Skingularity is Near, as we said, is the title. It's a free ebook. Anybody can drop me an email from my website, get a copy of this. I'm absolutely committed to getting as many copies of this book out there as possible so that people are aware of what's going on. And the feedback that's coming back to me is that most people had no idea how advanced this technology is, or actually where it's headed.
Where is it headed, William? You would know.
It's headed into the skin, ultimately, but it's also what they are intending on creating is a what they describe as a synthetic neocortex, a new brain. They envision, this is coming from the digerati, the giants, I call them. You pick any brand name that you see at Best Buy, and they're all involved in this now. Every single one of these corporations,
it's going to be huge.
That you know, they're involved. They're talking about creating smart dust, nanobots, smaller than a speck of dust that will be implanted in your brain, that will map the contents of your brain, that will sync your brain to all the other 7.5 billion brains on the planet. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook has made it his earthly mission to connect every human being on the internet or in the cloud. And once we're all connected up, it forms this gigantic super brain. And what they're going to sell us on is to say, hey, George, your one brain is really, really good, but can you imagine having the brain power of 7 billion people? How about if your brain is instantly connected to all of these other people?
You want to learn a language? Bang, here it is.
Exactly. It's almost beyond our comprehension, and this is part of the problem, is that these guys are super brains and are playing with this mystical technology in ways that most of us are unaware. I mean, we think of Google as a search engine, but actually Google is in the immortality business, and they're synced up with Apple. They're synced up with Microsoft, Dell. All the other major players in this field are involved in this transformation of humanity and pushing this technology that is aimed at the skin and ultimately the transformation of humanity irrevocably.
What's the downside of all of this?
The downside is the complete loss of free will. The downside is with this technology in our brains or in our bodies, you're susceptible to being hacked by any government or corporation that can implant memories within you, can keep you from going in certain directions of thought, that will effectively create a massive prison planet, if you will. And, of course, now we're talking in the realm of DARPA and PRISM and the technology that the U.S. government has been developing that is all ultimately about control, and control through healthcare, control through use of technology, control through management of the internet. It's all ultimately aimed at a total surveillance society and in complete control of every single individual.
Are they trying to make us the robots, William?
Yes, absolutely. And it's about, in my opinion, harvesting this energy from the body. Every one of our bodies is now going to become a data bus, basically, on the internet, where we're going to have this information flowing through us and being utilized as basically as energy sources for this new super brain. But the other side of this is that we're talking about access to transformative technologies that can eradicate all human disease. And this is kind of the here kitty kitty moment that they're going to be offering. This is the serpent offering the apple to humanity, saying, "Hey, just take a bite of this apple and you'll be immortal. You'll never be sick again. You'll be omniscient. You'll know everything. You'll live to be 500 years old. The only thing you won't have any longer, by their definition, is a soul, because by the definition of the Digerati, your soul is basically the accumulation of all of your emails, everything that's been recorded. Every keystroke on your computer is recorded by PRISM, by the NSA. It's all going to be uploaded into supercomputers that will be able to reanimate your body as holographic avatars that will inhabit a simulated reality. Facebook, as we know it today, is utterly primitive compared to where they're going with it in the next several years, where they plan for you to take every single photo you put on Facebook, every comment on Facebook will be reanimated by these supercomputers, and your descendants will be able to interact with a 3D version of you in a simulated or holographic reality, which they think will be even more magnificent than our physical reality.
See, I think, though, the long-term life expectancy will be for the very rich. I don't think they want, the average person to live. You don't think so?
No, this technology, as it becomes 10,000 times more powerful in the coming years, will become 10,000 times less expensive, so that everybody will have
but why
access
would they
to it.
like everyone to live forever, William, instead of just the elitists?
That's a very good question. I mean, by this time we'll have 9 billion people on the planet. Can the planet sustain those kind of numbers? A lot of people say no, and then this opens up the conspiracy theorists that say, well, they're going to plan on eliminating the vast majority of us and get our population down to, they cite 500 million.
500 million, that's right. Is that conceivable?
Absolutely, it's conceivable, because you're right. I don't think the planet can sustain 9 billion people who are all wearing this super cloak or garment of technology, this e-skin. And here's the thing right now is that there's such a mismatch, George, because right now you've got hundreds of millions of people on the planet that have smartphones, but they don't have a toilet or fresh water, clean water.
No, that's true.
So why the sudden premium
or they don't eat.
Putting a phone in people's hands?
Control, exactly. And they're doing it at a rapid clip right now. Just a few days ago, Stephen Wozniak, one of the founders of Apple Computer, said the future is not bright. He's afraid of this technology now.
Well, he has to have that insider view. I'm just a guy that does research constantly online, keeps up with all the news reports, has insiders come to my presentations and tell me what's going on in some of these tech companies, and I'm alarmed by it, and I'm also in awe of it, and I recognize the choice that we're at right now. Are we going to create a rainbow smart skin connected to the cloud, or are we going to create a rainbow body of light for ourselves? Is it one or the other, or the other? Maybe there's a third way. I've always advocated to people, don't let them break the skin barrier on you. That's the ultimate ring pass knot. Don't let them put this stuff in your skin. It's probably okay to put the contact lens in your eye because you can remove that. But I'm not sure I want nanobots coming into all 10 of my body cavities.
Yeah, they'd be all over
awareness.
you. William, stay with us. We're going to come back with our final hour. Let's open up the phone lines, give you an opportunity to chat with William Henry, his website, williamhenry.net. I'm George Noory, and we'll be back in a moment right here on Coast to Coast AM. Well, this is indeed a divine universe, and we're going to come back and talk with William Henry about that and more of your questions and calls on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. William Henry with us. And your phone calls. William, you're doing some work with Robert Downey Jr. What are you doing?
Oh, my gosh. He's one of the all-time greats, and it's an honor. I've been his friend for a number of years.
Good for you.
I'm part of his team helping him with one of his upcoming movies.
So, isn't that fun?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I first met him on Iron Man. He got in touch with me and asked me to give him some input on that film, and we became friends, and talk about a lot of these subjects occasionally over the years. And now he's got this new movie, and it turns out that I had some information, something I knew a lot about, that he was very interested in and wanted to work it into a film. So here we are.
Well, that's great. Hey, get him on our program one day if you get a moment. Get him on our show.
Oh, absolutely. I'll definitely mention it to him. I presume he's a listener of the program, and
he lives out this way.
Love to talk with you.
Yeah, he's out in the L.A. area. We're going to go to calls in just a second, William. They're lining up for you. In everything that you've done in your career, looking for the Ark of the Covenant, you name it, what has been for you the most single fulfilling aspect?
Well, of course, it's about connecting with people and putting people together. I mean, whether it's through my books or presentations or the tours, it's almost like a miracle when you see people come together with like-minded others that say, hey, I'm really not crazy after all. There's other people that think like I think and get this and understand it. And that to me is always the big marvel, if you will, about doing this work. And it's what sustains me really is knowing that I'm not doing it just for myself, that there's a lot of other people out there that are benefiting from this work.
Would you put one of these cloak skins on yourself if and when?
I ask myself that all the time, and if I can control it, I might consider it, if I can remove it at the end of the day. I mean, where's the line, George? Because we put on clothing every day to protect our body, to beautify our body. We put tattoos on. We color hair. We do all kinds of things to improve the body. And there's a line where we say, well, wait a minute, I'm very comfortable wearing a cotton shirt, but I'm not sure I want a garment composed of nanotubes. And we all have to kind of start to think in these terms, because the wearable technology is being rolled out now. Google Glass was an attempt at that. It was a failure. It was too weird. People were too geeky looking. Plus, people didn't want you going around recording everything that you see. Huh. Apple has just rolled out Watch, which they hope to sell millions of those. This is their way of getting into or under your skin, because the wearable phase is intermediate. It's going to last at most 3 years. And then we're going to start seeing these technologies implanted in contact lenses and also directly into the skin. So, no, I'm not comfortable with utilizing this technology and putting it into my skin unless I can remove it and I can control it.
Do you think it's going too fast? I mean, look what's been going on over just the last couple of years, William.
Well, they've warned about this, though, George. I mean, we've been told this is what's coming, and here it is. And now it's, I mean, as the Bible says, we will be transformed in a blink of an eye, and this is it. I mean, in the millions of years of human history, the computer and the internet has only been here less than a second of that history. And here it is, utterly transforming our lives in ways that are completely beyond our comprehension. And that's perhaps the greatest fear of this, is that as the singularity takes place and the technology goes beyond our control, nobody knows what's going to happen. And so humanity has just handed over its free will to machines. And that I'm not sure that's the wise thing to do.
All right, to the phones now we go. First-time caller Ron is truck driving somewhere in Arizona. Ronnie, go ahead.
Hey, George, thanks.
Sure thing.
This is a wonderful conversation tonight. Just today I picked up a book out of my library, the English translation of the Nag Hammadi, and going to start reading it as I finished the Jesus Papers by Michael Page.
Oh, super. You'll enjoy that.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear you talking about that, and also about the crossbreeding of angels, humans. I've read a book several times over and over, the Urantia book that talks about midwayers. That is kind of that I think is a great read for people interested in this. My question really here is that I mean, this is scary on one sense, but in the other, it's exciting. You know, there's a lot of authors out there talking about how we're in a great transition and a moment of ascension here as a planet, solar system people. You know, this seems to be like a last-ditch effort by these darker entities, and I really do appreciate talking about the energy that truly is our protection from this, keeping our vibration up. But do you see that as a possibility that we truly are on the cusp of something incredible here, and it's like the last-ditch effort to try to control it?
No question about it. William, this is right down your alley, but it's everything you've been saying. It's exciting, but it's scary at the same time. It's almost like bungee jumping. It's scary, but it's exciting.
Totally. There's no question about it. And what makes it, which puts the twist on it, is this idea that this technology is actually the development of this technology, I should say, is the result of the and I'm not indicting Christianity here. I'm saying, though, historically, it's a fact. This runaway technology is a result of the ethos of Christianity. This technology is not coming out of India, Africa, China. It's coming out of Silicon Valley, out of America, out of the new Atlantis, because this is the ethos of Christianity, that ultimately humans can perfect themselves and that we can use technology to accelerate that perfection. This is the core of it. And so from that perspective, what we're looking at here is the ultimate fulfillment of Christianity, when at the end times, at the millennium, we will have new bodies of light, and we will inherit a new kingdom of heaven on earth. And this is exactly what is being fulfilled with this digerati or technocratic technology, is they are promising you will have, within 2 decades, the option to create a new body of light. It will be a holographic avatar, and you will dispense with your biological body, but this is exactly what Christianity has preached for almost 2,000 years. So when you get into it, it gets a bit confusing and even more complex, but that also kind of adds to the excitement as well. And again, I'm not saying we should do this, but what I am saying is that this is clearly the fulfillment of a long-sought desire of humankind, especially Christian thinking, to return to the original perfect state of Adam, who did not have a flesh and blood body. He did not have skin like we had. This is the result of the fall of man. And some people would argue that this technology represents a new fall of man. And that could be a possibility, but it could also be our ascension. And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but what I am trying to do is get a conversation going here so that we can look at it in a sensible and really intelligent way.
Where's the Ark of the Covenant, William? Is it in that church in Ethiopia? Where the heck is it?
The decoy Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia. The real thing was taken off the planet and will be returned by angels in the end times. And it's a huge subject. I covered it extensively in my book, The Judgment Day Device, about how ISIS, are these terrorists running around. They're looking for the Ark of the Covenant because it will fulfill their prophecy of the return of the Islamic Messiah, the Mahdi, who is symbolized by the Ark of the Covenant. And it sounds absolutely wild, but what ISIS needs to learn more than anything is that the Ark of the Covenant is a device powered by love, not by the love of power. And if they want to get anywhere in this world, they're going to have to start going into their hearts and transforming their hearts if they ever hope to succeed.
Well, that's a good point. I don't think they'll ever be smart enough to do that. It must have broken your heart to see what they did in those Iraqi museums.
Oh, my gosh, that's a travesty. Not just the Iraqi museum, the Aleppo museum in Syria, Nimrod's city, home of the Tower of Babel, was bulldozed recently. I mean, isn't it interesting, though, George, that at this time when we're talking about this new or next human, that we're dealing with this kind of barbaric approach to life as exemplified by ISIS. And it just goes to this idea that there's something missing in the human code. And that's what we're ultimately trying to get a handle on is what's the missing piece here, and how can we transform our world to make it a fairer place, a more balanced place where the resources of the planet are better allocated so that people have at least fresh water and a toilet. Hello. I mean, these are the fundamental issues that drive terrorism. These people look at us and say, you're the big, great Satan because you've got this technology and you've got this belief system that isn't compatible with our religion. And it's like, oh, my gosh, here it is all coming to a tipping point. I mean, this is the turning point of all of human history, and all of us are participants in this. And that's why I think we've got to upgrade our understanding about our world situation and the role of the individual at this time, because we truly are stepping into an era of individual empowerment. I mean, single individuals. You know, a kid with a computer in Indonesia can bring down the U.S. government. One person against a David and Goliath type scenario. And that's a real game changer for humanity. But all of us have this individual power to transform ourselves and to transform our world.
Let's go to Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Charles is with us. Charles, you're up with us.
Yeah. Hello,
Hi
George
there.
and William.
Good to have you with us.
I've lived with this for quite a few years. What would it mean for the recovery of the original cross of Christ nowadays? If you knew the location.
Well,
that's pretty dramatic. William, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in all of these, the tools of the Passion. They're called the Arma Christi, the instruments of the Passion. It includes the cross, the robe of light, the jar of anointing oil. There's several other tools that were in the quote-unquote ascension kit, and all of them are most holy objects. And what that means is that they have the capability of transmitting the vibration of holiness. So the recovery of any of these objects, such as the Shroud of Turin is one of these most holy objects, has the potential to infuse.
Oh, my God. It's like finding Noah's Ark, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, how dramatic would it be?
It's a total game changer in terms of our recognition of the past, but it also it causes the individual to ask the question, well, how do I awaken this divine spark within me? How do I connect to the divine realm? How do I become an instrument of love and light? That's the ultimate questions.
Okay, now we go back to Tim now in Oklahoma, east of the Rockies. Hey, Tim, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Hi, George. Hi, William.
Hi.
Yeah, I hope you answer this question. I hope it's not a stupid one, but I just want to know if you think it's coincidence or it could be a sign from my dad. One of the signs is from coast to coast. Ever since my dad died back in 2009, there's been a lot of scientists still around, and one of them was one I called Coast to Coast. The bunker song before I got on was Too Much Rain by Paul McCartney. The first song I played at my dad's burial, not one of Paul's most famous songs. The show was on the Bible, my dad's favorite subject. After they played Too Much Rain, the call was for a girl named Michelle. She didn't reply, so I got on. I also played the Beatles' Rubber Soul at my dad's burial, and the song Michelle is on Rubber Soul. So thank you, Michelle, my belle. I love you, I love you, I love you. I just want to know if you think that's a coincidence. I've had all kinds of weird signs ever since he's died, and I just want to know if you think it could be a sign or just coincidence.
Never a coincidence. I think things happen for a reason, William.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my affirmations is I am in the right place, the right time, with the right people, and the right action right now. And to me, that's what helps align you with your higher self, and perhaps the caller will benefit from that.
So of everything that you've been investigating of late, which one do you think is going to pop soon? The creation of this new skin? What? Let's look at it this way. You've got, for the past few years, I've been tracking the Ark of the Covenant really heavily because it is the entire backstory of what's happening in the Middle East between ISIS and Israel and so forth. They're trying to rebuild the Temple of Solomon right now, which is a trigger for Armageddon. And so I've been heavily researching that and looking into that aspect of it and following people like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran, who
was actively seeking the Ark of the Covenant, proclaimed himself publicly to be a representative of the Islamic Messiah, the Mahdi. He's no longer in office. Where's Mahmoud Ahmadinejad today? What's he doing today? He runs a nanotechnology institute in Tehran.
Is that what he's doing?
What is that? Yeah.
No, he's got an engineering background, so I guess he would do something like that.
A PhD in engineering, exactly. And it tells me that he knows what the Ark of the Covenant really is. It's a consciousness device. And what we're talking about with this nanotechnology and these mystical technologies is technology becoming conscious. And that, I mean, is almost is beyond our comprehension, is that everything is going to become smart. I mean, just 10 years ago, there were only a few billion smart devices on the planet: toasters, ovens, refrigerators, computers, cars, and so forth. Within 3 years, there will be 50 billion smart things on the planet that are connected to what they call the Internet of Things, this new planetary skin or Internet of Things. So our entire planet is suddenly becoming infused or pervaded or permeated with this smart technology, all of it interactive, all of it with cameras, reporting back to supercomputers. We can't even imagine what we're creating for ourselves or what is being created for us. And the question is it a new paradise, a new kingdom of heaven on earth, or is it just an amplification of the prison planet? All of us are involved. All of us have to be part of deciding this. And the way we decide is with our dollars. Are we going to support this technology? Are we going to utilize it? But as I said earlier, my greatest fear is that implantation of or enmeshing our skin with this technology could become mandatory.
That's dangerous. Oh, sure. And it sounds like the sign of the beast, huh? The mark of the beast?
Exactly. Without question. It's such an obvious fulfillment of that prophecy from the book of Revelation, and we're living it right now.
William, we're going to come back in just a moment with final phone calls for you right here on Coast to Coast AM. Well, we've got a lot going on for you on our next Coast to Coast program. Roberta Grimes joins us as we talk about her work of The Fun of Dying. I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, noted hypnotherapist Dr. Bruce Goldberg joins us as he takes us back and back and back. And we'll come back in a moment with William Henry and your final calls on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. William, when we started talking years ago, we talked about the possibility of these wormhole stargates in Iraq and other places. Any more movement on that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always, working on that idea, because that's the whole purpose of attaining the light body, is to open these gateways or wormholes into other parts of the cosmos, maybe even other dimensions. So I'm constantly working on that front.
Well, with William Henry, his website, williamhenry.net. I remember back in 2001, too, when we did some shows, you used to have a little counter when people would click on your website. Do you still have that?
No, I don't.
Remember that?
A lot of people used to do that on websites, and then we got away from that. So I really... I don't know, but I always love being on Coast. I've got about 1,000 emails here from our show already this evening. People interested. So obviously it's a big hot button subject here.
Let's go to the phones. We go to Tony in Seattle. Go ahead, Tony. Thanks for calling.
Oh, thank you so much, George, for taking this call. This show is definitely going to go down as an epic broadcast for the best of Coast to Coast. And let me just preface this by saying that, and good evening, Mr. Henry. Let me just preface this by saying evil will come to you in a good form 95% of the time. Now, George, you had help me with the pronunciation, please. Michio Kaku,
the physicist. Yeah.
And he was telling you that in an evolutionary process with the implants in the brain, and that they were putting dreams on paper and tangible thoughts on paper, and making it, manifesting it from your mind, and this administration, in my opinion, they'll tell you the truth, but it's the opposite. Now, Joe Biden said just before on the second campaign, before, he said they'll put you back in chains, And everybody thought, oh, well, this is against the black people. It's a racist deal. No, he's talking to everybody. We're going to put you back in chains. You're going to be slaves again. And that I agree with you, Mr. Henry, on when you focus on Christ. I'm saying that your mind, you're trained. You're not trying to be susceptible to all this, just all this propaganda, you might say, from these aliens trying to manipulate your mind. And I just so much appreciate what you're doing, George, for everybody here. This is just a great show tonight. I sure appreciate it. You guys have a terrific evening.
We've been clicking along these days, William, haven't we? We finally got to know each other.
Absolutely. And gosh, we've been talking a long time together, George, and I think you said it earlier, it's just all accelerating, and the pace is, it's just going to be lightning quick here from here on out. I mean, we can't even begin to really comprehend where all this is going in the next just few years. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I get some tech people coming to my presentations, and they all keep saying 2020 is the year when the AI stuff really comes online. Maybe we start to see the first signs of the real the singularity. But my take on it is Google, the giants, the digerati, they're aiming for immortality. But I'm not sure a new skin will make us immortal beings, because in all spiritual traditions, it's actually righteousness and having a pure heart that makes us immortal beings. Who can enter the kingdom of heaven? It's those who have clean hands and pure hearts. And what that means is that we're just beings that live a good and godly life. And that, to me, is the antidote to this, if you call it an infection of this technology. And some people really do believe that this is some kind of an infection or a virus that's coming into the human code here. And it's based on, in my opinion, not love, but fear. People will utilize this technology because they fear the future. They fear death. They fear age. They fear themselves, basically. And all of this technology is a way for them to hopefully either mask or overcome that fear. And the only way to truly become an immortal being is to tap that divine spark within and recognize that we are these immortal beings of light and love.
Do you feel as if time is going too fast?
I do.
I do. I sure do.
This has been prophesied. I remember having conversations about this with Greg Braden here in Nashville in 1993, where they talked about, hey, everything's about to accelerate here, and you want to really get on the ride now because it's going to be really tough to catch up with this whirling dervish kind of thing that's going on right now, this spiral. You want to catch it when it's slow so that you can begin to really accelerate with it, because to try to hit it from the outside later is going to be quite difficult. And I think that's what people are starting to encounter, is that things aren't making sense. Things are moving so fast, and they're looking for a way to get some grounding in their life. And the only way to ground ourselves is to really go within, connect with that divine spark, and recognize who we are as cosmic beings.
I sometimes think of life like a horse race, William. And, you're born, the race starts, and then as you approach, the peak there, you're at the top, and then the home stretch. I think a lot of us are in this home stretch. It's kind of strange.
Well, we sure are, but we're in it together. And I think that as we continue our conversations about it, that's going to bring illumination. And with the illumination comes a sense of confidence and understanding. This is what I was going about earlier in terms of the predators hijacking our ascension stories, because we don't have this real sense of where do we go from here. Once we cross the finish line and we enter into the afterlife, what next? And as we develop our understanding and consciousness in that regard, it really builds our sense of grounding and confidence in this life and gives us a sort of a North Star to follow, whereas before we might have felt like we're all out on the ocean kind of floating around with no direction. now we're developing a North Star, and that's what the work that you're doing is so important that many of the guests on Coast are doing as well.
Santa Maria, California, it's Gary's turn. Gary, you're on with William Henry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wondered if LA had an opinion on Google's new FaceNet facial recognition software. If they can turn on the camera when I'm saying, "Okay, Google," get a perfect image of my face, my lips, how I speak. If you can recognize my face from multiple camera angles, you can also animate my face.
That's right.
And then animate the rest of my body. You can have me literally saying anything that you wanted me to say. And as far as your Bible code, the Bible gives you your missing pieces in Revelations 20 and Revelation 4:6. It talks about the cherubim were the four faces, face of a bull, face of a lion, face of a man, and face of an eagle. Well, the eagle is Scorpio, the lion, Leo, etc. Those are the four fixed signs of astrology. King James threw astrology under the bus when they mistranslated the word sorcerer into astrologer. The Catholics, you won't find the mistranslation. But in the King James Version, every time you look up the word astrologer and it downplays it or it says it's evil, the actual word in Hebrew is sorcerer, not astrologer. And in Revelations it says that the leaves of the tree of life are good for healing the nations. Well, the tree of life sheds its fruit, 12 different fruit, 12 times a year. That's the lunar cycles of astrology. And when he ascended, it said that heaven has a foundation of, they say, jasper. Well, jasper is quartz. They didn't have a word for quartz. Quartz didn't come around until 60 AD. So if you look at the tetrahedron structure of quartz, the tetrahedron structure of the water of your body, it has to do with light. Light is quantum entangled with all of the planets that it bounces off of. The sun quantum entangles with Mars. It imprints through the solar receptors of your skin, gives you your personality. If you match your personality in psychological profiling, not predictive astrology, psychological compatibility programming that the CIA knows very well from Alan Dulles, and Carl Jung on his archetypes that he did the personality profiles of Hitler's people. And Dulles was so impressed, and so was Truman, that they made Carl Jung, Jungian astrology, an actual agent because he nailed it. They've been collecting our astrological data. They know my profiles. They know even which girls I like, because when I'm talking directly into my smartphone, they're watching my pupil size. They know what kind of girls I like. And if we don't get a handle on this technology and this government, it will get out of control. And the best way to get a handle on it is very simply start smartphone petition signing, put things on the ballot, recall politicians that don't pay attention to the grid, and everything else, and I will wait for your response off the air. Thank you for the additional time, George.
Okay,
and I
Gary.
hope I didn't abuse the relaxing of your 30-day rule that you relaxed.
We did relax the 30-day rule. There's no doubt about that. William, he had a lot there to talk about.
He did. I mean, he's advocating some steps forward, a political solution to this. When it's, I agree with that in large part, but it's also an individual solution. Apart from turning off the internet and turning off your computer, what can individuals do here? Well,
I don't think they're going to do a lot, William.
Pardon me?
I don't think they're going to do a lot.
No. Well, I mean, it all goes back to, as we discussed earlier, keeping ourselves at a higher vibration. The way to overcome this infection, which I believe is fear-based, is to do everything we can to build our confidence, to acts of love, to keep ourselves connected to the earth, spend time in nature, less time at the computer. These types of things are the things that keep us in the Homo sapien mode as opposed to in the H plus mode, which is the term that the transhumanists use for the next evolution of humanity. So a lot of this is within individual control, but it is going to take massive public education and discussion about this very issue, because we're approaching a ring past knot here with this technology, and many of us are going to look back and go, well, hey, nobody asked me about it.
But they will. Bob in Orlando, it's your turn. Bob, go ahead.
Hey, guys. Great show again.
Thank you, sir.
I had a question and a quick story of my encounter with a reptilian. Which one would you like first?
How about the question? We'll get that out of the way.
The question is, I remember reading a book like I believe it was called The Law of One, and it talks about how in our solar system, the Saturn enclave, which are supposedly eighth-dimensional beings, they're essentially in charge of our solar system, and they put planet Earth in quarantine because of ET interference. I was wondering if we had any information about that, or any information about any good ETs.
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the idea of the boundary, which suggests to me some kind of a quarantine. And yes, I do believe there are good ETs. The Watcher Angels, for example. I wrote a book about the Watchers. People like to go up and say the Watchers are all evil beings, fallen angels, so forth. But in fact, there are good Watchers who were here to assist humankind in our transformation into angelic beings. And the message that they told is that we are originally divine beings, light beings, and they're here to assist us in our recovery of our original status. And that is the motivating factor here, or the motivation behind, again, this technology, is this desire to attain perfection. We're just going about it with this technology maybe in a way that we really don't want to. We have it within our code, within our software within us, and our biology to attain divinity and to become angelic beings, to do exactly what Jesus did, what he demonstrated in the way of love when he morphed himself in a flash into a being of light, as evidenced by the Shroud of Turin. That's a message for us. That is an invitation for us to follow that path. And you wonder what of course would Jesus say about this technology today? Would he be embracing it? Is the second coming going to be all of our billions of brains linked up together in the cloud in some computer in Mountain View, California, where suddenly they beam this holographic Jesus to everybody, and that's the second coming? Is that where we're going with this? I mean, that is certainly one possibility, one scenario that this technology will afford.
Yeah, I think he might say this was evil. What do you think, William?
I think it's a good possibility, but here's the bottom line question of all of this. When we're talking about these technologies, bits, atoms, neurons, and genes, the computer science, nanotechnology, brain science, and genetic technology, these are simply retooled versions of earth, air, fire, and water, the elements of which our bodies are composed. What's missing largely in this conversation is the fifth element, which is spirit. And the question is, can spirit, source, divinity, presence, the Holy Spirit infuse technology? Can spirit infuse any material object? And in many people's opinion, we're talking about love here when we're talking about spirit. It can infuse any material object. But then the question really becomes, can technology ever truly love anything? This is what is on the table here, is this idea of what is your belief about the Holy Spirit, about spirit or presence, the source? Is this technology coming from source? Are we meant to bring this into our bodies as a way of further expressing human evolution? And will this technology help us love each other more? That's the bottom line question in my view, and that's where I end the book, The Skingularity is Near, and I will be following up on these questions in later works.
And William, good luck on your trek to see the Shroud of Turin.
Thank you so much, and I invite anybody who would like to join to come to my website, williamhenry.net. I'll send you an itinerary, It's going to be a trip of a lifetime. I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and thank you for having me on the show. Again, George, it's such a pleasure to talk with you and to connect with the Coast audience. I'm truly honored.
God, we should try to get you to call in as you look at the shroud.
Oh, no. I'll do it right after. I don't think I can take the cell phone in there, but I'll...
That's a good point. They may not even let you take pictures, right?
No, you can take pictures.
You can now.
Photos. Yeah.
Super. William, be well. Keep in touch. Say hi to Claire for us, okay?
I sure will. Thank you.
William Henry. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Borelson, George Knapp. I'm George Noory. Somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.